Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.
Brothers and sisters, one of the healthiest things you can do for yourself is staying hydrated. And you know what I'm talking about. You go to your basketball game, football game, pro wrestling events, and suddenly you get a little parched. Well, one of the best ways that you can keep yourself safe is using Liquid IV. See, Liquid IV is a hydration stick that you can pour into 16 ounces of water and immediately get more efficiently hydrated than water alone. Okay? 12 delicious, refreshing flavors, all of your essential B vitamins, including B3, B5, B6, B12, even vitamin C. 3 times the electrolytes as traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, non-GMO, free from gluten, dairy, soy, all that good stuff there. Listen, I'm telling you right now, folks, Liquid IV has changed my life. It's something that I use on a regular basis because I'm always on the go. I gotta stay hydrated. You gotta stay hydrated. Liquid IV has your back. It'll keep you exactly that way, hydrated. But don't just take my word for it. I want you to try it out. And because of that, if you head over to liquidiv.com right now, you can put anything that you want in your cart, and then at checkout, use the promo code Duke Loves Wrestling. No spaces in that now. Duke Loves Wrestling. Going to save you 20% on your entire order. That's how much I care about your hydration. That's how much I want you to check out Liquid IV. So what are you waiting for? Shop better hydration today. Visit liquidiv.com. That's right.
This is Mateo Mayorga with 5 Reasons Sports Network and Fansided, and you're listening to Duke Loves Wrestling.
Folks, you know I am a big fan of the NBA. Grew up watching it my entire life. And I love to check in with the folks who cover the sport because it just keeps me in the loop on what's going on in general, especially the business of the NBA. I'm always curious about that. And shout out to our good friend Peter Vesey. You know, he's introduced me to a lot of folks, and he's been the gateway to building a lot of great relationships in sports, in journalism. And certainly, you know, my favorite of them all is our returning guest here. So without further ado, Mateo, welcome back to Duke Loves Wrestling, brother.
Man, you honor me. It's such a privilege to come back here and be on this show. I loved it so much the first time. And, you know, it's been a long time coming. We got to follow up on some things. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. And you're absolutely right. It's been a long time coming. Definitely got to follow up. Before we even do that, though, I want to give a shout out to your dad. He shared when you were on the show, and you're just such a gentleman and what have you. I got to show respect and appreciation for Mr. Mayorga. So definitely shout out to Big Papa over there. What's up, brother?
Thank you, for sure. I'll let him know you told him. For sure.
Absolutely. So what's going on, man? I mean, I know that we are knocking on the door of October, which means that we're right on the road to the next NBA season and all the craziness that goes along with it. I know there's been some moves happening, both in terms of talent and contracts, and you know, even the rights fees. You know, what's going to be airing on TV and what networks and all that good stuff there. From your perspective, as somebody who covers the sport, what are some things that we should know about as NBA fans? What should we be paying attention to as we head into this next season?
Well, Duke, the NBA's historic move with their new rest minimum games policy, or anything in regards to the resting of the players, it seems like now there is agreement from, you know, everybody, not just, you know, fans and media, but the league at hand, that there is a problem. You know, it was a problem that they weren't acknowledging that, you know, the best players and, you know, frankly, a lot of the upper class or middle class role players in the league were not suiting up like they did in the past. And we should also mention that around the same time that there was a precipitous drop in attendance, COVID was something that changed the world. And there is continued medical data that supports that people are still experiencing the effects of that virus even months after testing negative. But as it pertains to, the NBA's, new rules and, at least the minimum games policy for qualifying for awards in the future, the NBA wanted to crack down on, the resting of players. And this is their effort to make sure that the league gets back to a culture of playing 82 games that teams were kind of drastically getting away from in these last 4 or 5 years. Now, the league will tell you there is no evidence to support that guys are getting hurt more often than the past. That's not my position. That is the league's. But they're still looking into specifically like every one of these occurrences, like the injuries. They still want to be thorough. And one of the reasons I believe they set a marker at 65 games for the awards and the recognition titles like MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, All NBA, and the defensive teams is, and also the caveat in there, 62 games and 62 games for the players who get hurt and can't proceed. The reason why I think they picked this number is because the league still themselves doesn't have a full picture of why guys are missing games aside from rest. Sure, guys are getting hurt too, and it's kind of strange that they say that they don't see evidence for more injuries in the past. But, this is why I think it's not such a black and white issue and why people shouldn't be so absolutist. Maybe it's something on our end that we as the people who cover it should talk about it more. But basketball does have a lot of wear and tear on the body, and it is a contact sport. And personally, just seeing guys like Jimmy Butler after a game in March when the Heat beat the Knicks in a close game, he had 35 that night and played heavy minutes. This man was limping like Kevin McHale, Duke, and I couldn't believe it. I don't get to, travel to Miami so often, but I was asking around and I was told that this was common for Jimmy Butler. So it's pretty amazing that someone like him can, heal like Wolverine in between games and come back and ball. But listen, like guys, still get hurt. The guys are also resting. This is a very complex issue. At the same time, a couple of weeks ago, you saw Adam Silver come out at his press conference and kind of take a hard line. And this was for the fans, of course, but it was also, to protect their league partners, the television broadcasters, because during the previous CBA, the 2017 version, there were guys who were supposed to, like the big stars like Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, who were supposed to be on national televised games, and they rested, and the broadcast partners complained to the league, and good reason. That was bad for everybody involved. It's bad for promotion, wasted dollars, and most importantly, the fans who paid their good hard-earned money to see these players. Sometimes they could have season tickets. There's some who scrounged up all they could just to see them once, and they couldn't. This was a big deal, and the league doesn't want to see that. What really ticked them off was young players with no injury history missing time when they shouldn't. And another one that was a big deal to them was specifically the situation in Portland at the end of the regular season. Damian Lillard missed the last 10 games. That team only won one of those games, and what a coincidence. They were the team that picked number 2 overall in the draft and picked Scoot Henderson, who is supposed to be the real deal and the next best thing at point guard. Those are the things the league doesn't want to happen. They want to crack down on the resting of players who, when they are healthy and not experiencing pain, they want you on the court. Now, at the same time, Duke, they will also tell you this. If you are in pain, you are hurt, or worse yet, there's an injury, they do not want you to play. Like in the past, there was things like Kevin McHale competing with a broken foot in the 1987 playoffs. He suffered this injury, I believe, late in the regular season, but the Celtics got to the finals that year against the Lakers and lost. That man was playing with a fracture in his foot. That man today limps around. The price, for being a professional athlete in the NBA should not be what that man suffered. It's not as common as it used to be in the past of those abhorrent practices, but you do still see from time to time some freak shows, like, for example, what the Warriors did to Kevin Durant, trotting him out there after 3 weeks of hurting his calf. Then he popped his Achilles, and 11 minutes into Game 5 of the 2019 finals, even closer to now, in 2021 in the first round, Anthony Davis was playing like garbage, not because of his abilities. No, the man had a very hurt left groin that was affecting his ability to play. Shame on these organizations for suckering these players and using their love for the game and manipulating them to go out there for some cheap wins. The league doesn't want to see that anymore. It's some abhorrent practices. And listen, anybody that, competes while they're physically injured is, asking for trouble and also asking for their careers, to be cut shorter. But, some key observations that I've, taken away just from speaking to people, Duke, as well, is that the league was on a conference call with the representatives of the 30 teams, and one thing that they told the teams to provide them was medical data to, or regarding this subject on everything they got. So because they're still listening and learning too, they had to, enact this 65 game, policy, but, because they're still asking for more information. That's why I'm not surprised it wasn't higher. And another thing they were told by the teams is, contrary to what the public wants, the league to lower the amount of back-to-backs. According to, NBA communications, there are some organizations, like I wasn't told specifically which ones, who are advocating for more back-to-backs because there is some medical data to suggest that it prevents injuries. As crazy as it sounds, this is what the league is telling me. This is not, what I think, but another thing that, some proponents of playing more back-to-backs have said is that it helps keep their guys in rhythm. So right now, what the league has going on is a real complex debate with the rest play debate. And it's sad to see, people not do their full homework on it and want to just say, well, the guys in the past sucked it up and did it. The guys today are a bunch of babies. Look what they're getting paid, and they're not playing as often. Like, in every decade, you can point to the freaks who had extensively long careers, but there are also guys in every era before the modern age that should have played longer. Penny Hardaway was a workhorse until he wasn't, because his extremities gave out on him, and he obviously was robbed of his abilities and couldn't be on the court the same amount of time. Larry Bird was amazing until his back gave out. He was someone who was almost perfect in attendance. So the league's got, issues there. There's also, what's been going on with the president of the Cleveland Cavaliers on his birthday. Nonetheless, he, the day before, actually, his birthday is on September 16th. The day he turned 41 on the 15th, our man was booked for driving under the influence of alcohol, and he pled not guilty. I publicized the body cam footage online so people could see for themselves what they think of that situation. There's, also this kid Wembanyama, man, Victor Wembanyama, to be specific for the audience. He comes from the club Metropolitans 92 from the league in France, the French league. He is a great prospect, but I think a lot of the NBA media, a lot of the scouting is very flawed, because I'm hearing a lot of talk that he's the greatest prospect of all time, and that gives me pause, because I'm aware of who Lou Alcindor was. That's eventually Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He changed his name. I'm aware of who Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, LeBron James were, and what I've noticed, or what I think is the case, is a lot of NBA media have propped up this kid like he's the next greatest thing since sliced bread. And I wouldn't be surprised if these are the same jokers that tear him down the moment he doesn't live up to the expectations. The reason why I don't think he's going to be all of that immediately is because he's too skinny, man. he was kind of thrown around a bit in certain matchups, playing in France against 6'5" players, and now he's got to be in a grown man's league. He's gonna have a learning adjustment, and it's going to shock the heck out of a lot of people. So, the news with this, the new policy and the rules, and what's going on with the Cleveland Cavaliers executive. There's also things, Wembanyama, Jaylen Brown getting that super enormous deal, the best player in the world, possibly Nikola Jokic winning a title and getting out of Dodge, so to speak. Partying his summer in Serbia, I think is interesting. There's a lot going on in the NBA.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a hell of an update. And I want to give you your props because you were on top of this thing with COVID and how it could affect the longevity of players, especially as we go through seasons and what have you. And the fact that so many were having to play less. And there was no other explanation that would make it make sense other than the fact that these are the residual effects of COVID-19 on these athletes. So it's interesting that the league itself is now implementing a policy for rest officially and all this good stuff here. So you were right on it with that, man.
Appreciate it.
Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Because as you can see, we have a whole new wave of COVID-19 that we're in the process of preparing for. It's that time of year. So this is not something that's going away every year in the fall, going into the winter. This is a time where people are indoors more and what have you, which that in and of itself can increase the possibility of transmission. Where do you see things going for the league itself? I mean, is there a possibility that the league could even pause for periods of time because of this?
I think it's gotten to the point where it's the NBA is too big to fail unless there is a national health emergency. They will not do something like that. And the funny thing is, it took something like them shutting down the league for other world organizations to take notice and start following their footsteps and taking the safe route. But in regards to where you go forward, until the NBA sees more, conclusive data or evidence for things, they will not risk their, financial bottom line. I have put in inquiry requests for interviews with specifically Dr. Sandeep Lahadi of the Methodist Hospital in Houston, one of the leading research centers for COVID research. I'm still waiting to hear back from him and his representatives. Hopefully I get him soon because I would love to provide an update because I have a whole lot of questions on, specifically what, these things or what these symptoms can do to an athlete long term. And let's be real, a lot of the NBA players, a lot of them tested positive when, the league was in its shutdown and, in its first season back from it. But, I don't think we can expect much right now.
What about from a general standpoint? I mean, what are you looking forward to as the season is approaching us? Do you see any surprise hits for any particular teams, or are there teams that traditionally are competitive? You think they've taken a major step back with the moves they've made during the offseason?
Oh, my man, I forgot to mention one of the big power plays going on in the league right now, Damian Lillard, and how he is also trying to get rid of the Portland Trailblazers. This is a storyline that it is a big deal because this guy has 4 years left on his contract and has told the team he doesn't want to play for them. And one of the four horsemen of Miami media, Barry Jackson, who works for the Miami Herald, has reported recently that if Damian Lillard were to get traded to another outfit, he would immediately ask for a swap to the Miami Heat. They're doing this to try to dissuade other teams from making a play for Damian Lillard. And this is kind of some unprecedented stuff because, in the past, Ben Simmons was someone who was moved with multiple years on his deal. And when that happened, I said that'll open the floodgates. But Damian Lillard has kind of become a flashpoint for people taking positions because they're like, a lot of people are saying, well, it's bad for the league that someone like him has as good as he is, has all this time left, and he can just, because of his star power, start throwing his weight around and make things uncomfortable and force the team's hand to trade him. There is that position. It's a valid one. Then there's the other one that he signed that deal, that extension, with the intention of the team being a competitive outfit. They sold him on the promise of contention, and what they did at this draft was go on and pick his replacement, number 2 overall, Scoot Henderson. I understand the player's frustration. He's on the back end of his career, still excellent, I want to say, but 33 years old. Realistically, how much time could he have left at an elite level? And he's a competitive guy. He wants to compete for championships. I know in the past he said that he's very loyal to Portland and he wants to be committed to the grind and win there. But, people, he's a human being. People change their minds. What you wanted 5 years ago, a year ago, may not be what you want tomorrow. And he's trying to get his way over to the Miami Heat any way he can. And it's funny, you speak to any contract lawyer, outside of this, and they'll tell you when one side, breaks their side of the deal, it's null and void. And that's precisely how Damian Lillard and his camp are looking at this situation. That's one of the big stories going on. Shame on me for not bringing that up a moment ago. There's also James Harden trying to do the same thing, trying to get to the Los Angeles Clippers, although they've put out recently the feeler that, they are no longer engaged in negotiations for Harden, because right now it is too difficult to move him after he opted into the last year of his deal. There is that going on. But, one of the surprise teams you mentioned a moment ago, Duke, I really think the Minnesota Timberwolves could be something this year. They weren't as good as people expected them to be last season, but I want to remind everybody, Karl Anthony Towns only played in 25 games last season, and he is one of the best bigs in the league. It's hard to build continuity with your best players if one of them isn't on the floor, and someone like him who can provide so many options with Anthony Edwards, specifically on pick and pop or, screen and roll, and also as someone who's a threat in the corner. Karl Anthony Towns, at least in one of the corners, makes like half of his shots. He is a real lethal option on the offensive side, and they incorporated him next to Rudy Gobert for limited time last year, and a lot of people thought it was a clunky fit. 29 games. It's specific. Those 29 wasn't the full total he was with Rudy, because if memory serves correct, Rudy missed a couple of missed some in between too. That is not enough time to for players of this caliber, guys who are intended to sacrifice for the greater good, to build cohesion. I would be on the lookout for the Minnesota Timberwolves, because they got a lot of talent, and they underachieved in large part because of injuries. They won a game against the the current defending champions in the first round. So did the Miami Heat in the finals. Not to say, oh, they just won a game, but the games they were in against the Nuggets were very competitive. They need a little bit more help to push them over the top. That doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be champions, but I would be on the lookout for them as a quality squad. I also like the Oklahoma City Thunder, because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is possibly the best guard in the entire NBA. He should be getting the type of promotion that you see Jason Tatum getting in Boston. I know a lot of that has to do with the TV market, and shamefully the ratings of I don't even want to mention their names of a metric that piles a lot of data in a flawed way. But this guy Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he is amazing, and he was one of the best players in the entire world, competing for Canada in the World Cup, for the team that won the bronze medal. He is going to be an MVP candidate, no doubt about it in my mind. I really like that outfit. They're also going to have one of the shining rookies this year, Chet Holmgren. He hasn't played a minute of NBA basketball, but he was a redshirt last year. He has been training with NBA people and been around, an NBA team, I think he has a much higher advantage than someone like Wembanyama, who is also a great prospect and a skinny big, but he is someone who just moved over here from France. I'm sure is going to be experiencing a culture shock, and the expectations set on Wembanyama are so much higher than on someone like Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren is expected to be a role player. A lot of people are expecting Wembanyama unfairly to be, a star even in his first season. But so there are those things going on with the league right now. I'd say the Miami Heat are in a state of limbo because they'll probably be a quality squad with the players they have, but if they get Damian Lillard, it probably thwarts them into contention. But there is that whole, power play going on, and at the end of the day, the executives don't have to move him. If they're willing to make it ugly, they can. So there's all of those storylines going on, and to tell you the truth, it's kind of interesting to watch, man.
One of the big stories that's been going around is Bronny James, LeBron James' son, who is a rookie at USC. Unfortunately, he had a heart issue. I think congenital heart defect is what the official diagnosis was. And now it seems like some things are in limbo here, just in terms of when he's going to return to playing basketball in college. And how does that affect his prospects potentially playing in the NBA? There's been a lot of speculation that LeBron is hanging on and continuing his career in the NBA because he wants to play with Brony. At this point, Mateo, from your experience covering basketball, taking a look at this situation, what are the prospects? Do you think it's still a possibility that LeBron and Bronny will play together in at least one NBA game? Or do you think that ship has sailed and we may be looking at the last, if not one of the last seasons for LeBron James?
I absolutely think they will play together. And it's too good of a PR story for the league to pass up. To my understanding, Bronny is good. This was a one-off thing. He's a healthy young man, and this is not expected to be a problem in the future. And here's the thing: he's also a very talented athlete. He's a highly touted recruit. Apart from that, I think he was going to make the NBA regardless. I understand why this happened. Some people are going to be like, "Whoa, the risk at hand." It might most of all affect his draft standing. But listen, I think somebody, even if he doesn't get picked, you're like, oh my goodness, the opportunity to get signing Bronny James is likely the gateway to signing LeBron James. So I don't think this is going to stop them from taking the court together and having one of the NBA's greatest stories for a day. So this is something LeBron's everybody has suspected. He's talked about it a little bit. Everybody's known he's wanted this for a while. So I no doubt about it in my mind.
Well, listen, Mateo said it, so you can definitely expect that to happen, folks. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. You definitely have given me a refresher. I feel so much more comfortable going into this next season here, although I am still concerned about my Miami Heat. So you gave me a little angst there. Anything on the Boston Celtics, since I'm a Boston guy, and they're certainly the team that I root against, which is ironic. Any Boston Celtics news?
Yeah, absolutely. The plantar fasciitis Kristaps Porzingis has is going to be one of the biggest things people are on top of at the start of the regular season. Because listen, the Boston Celtics gave up a quality player in Marcus Smart to get him, and a lot of people referred to Marcus as somebody who was like the engine of that squad, of their heart and soul, and he was the type of gritty role player that would dive for loose balls, set screens, do all the stuff that the star players don't want to do. And Kristaps Porzingis is a very good NBA player. But listen, historically, when big men have problems in the lower body, it's very concerning. And plantar fasciitis is an issue that if not handled correctly, could linger the whole year. It's something that, robbed Joakim Noah, who was one of the great Chicago Bulls, of, a great run in the later stages of his career. This is something that I really hope that gets managed correctly, because, I want to see the Boston Celtics, compete at a high level, because they're a great squad with a lot of talented players, and the league is best when everybody is going at it at full strength. There is that going on. There's the issue with Brogdon. The team tried to trade him and they couldn't. We'll see if he's healthy going forward with his elbow. But apart from that, your Boston Celtics, Jaylen Brown, he signed one of the richest deals. Well, I think it was the richest deal in history at the time. $303.7 million, as I think what the contract can balloon up to if he hits all of the prerequisites. This makes him one of the players with the highest expectations in the league. Personally, I thought he was somewhere, you want to say, in the top 20, top 25. I think that's fair. But, a guy like him with the right type of team built around him, could take you very far in the playoffs, especially when his, running mate is someone as good as Jason Tatum. But a lot is going to be expected from Jaylen Brown. He is paid like the best player in the world. And frankly, the Boston Celtics had a disappointing, end to their season in the conference finals. They went down 0-3 against the Miami Heat, won the next three, setting up a, all-time anxiety-filled, match for the supporters of the Boston crowd and the Miami group. Speaking to people who support both teams, they just wanted that series to be over. And, guys like Caleb Martin from the Miami Heat, Gabe Vincent, showed out in Boston for Game 7, outplaying, the Celtics. And, someone like Brown, who was paid all this money, at the very least, the fans and, the organization, the next season are expecting a trip back to the NBA Finals. Winning is very hard at that level, but, you got to show you can at least get back there to validate such a deal, especially, he's going to have, probably more burden on his shoulders at the beginning of the year, because with the concern with Brogdon, we still don't know with what he is with his injury. He was the point guard. Smart was the point guard who you gave away for Kristaps Porzingis. One of these guys is going to have more ball handling duties, and it very well could be Jaylen Brown. So he's got a lot to live up to. Don't get me wrong, he's a very fine player. I think he's up for the challenge, but there is that going on with the Boston Celtics.
Well, Mateo, what's the best way everyone can keep up with you to definitely follow along as the season develops and certainly get updates on a daily, weekly basis, you name it, whenever you're putting stuff out?
Well, on my Twitter page, it's Mateo Mayorga 23. That's where I'm mostly at in promoting my work for 5 Reasons and Fanside, and also within the last at the end of July, I kind of just messing around, started a Substack page for whenever, there's something going on related to the league or in the combat sports business, I could comment and get it out to people. It's Mateo Mayorga at Substack.com. That's something I will be working more on this year for, more news at the national level. My work for Fansided is more geared towards the Cleveland Cavaliers, and at 5 Reasons Sports at, covering the Miami Heat. On my Substack page, I want to cover the league at a national level. And, when I get my big interviews with big wigs, it'll be there.
This is Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Wrestling.